This week we're going to take a bit of a break from screaming into the void about niche forms of fascism and instead discuss an imprudent financial decision that I have made.
I am fishing for compliments with this video. Look at how fluffy they are. Little tiny friends. I would like to introduce you to my 6 Leicester Longwool sheep. Leicester Longwools are now a very rare breed native to this county, famously bred by pioneering farmer Robert Bakewell during the agricultural revolution, so they have some historical significance. In the future we'll do a cultural history of this breed, but for this video I just wanted to talk about why I have decided to get some animals, and also how expensive it is to start up something new in farming. Leicester Longwools are not a commercial breed, so I'm not expecting any appreciable financial return, certainly not for a few years. And especially not given that I only have 6. I only have 6 partly because they're such a rare breed you can only buy a few at once, and also because on this farm we're cow people. We're recently ex-dairy, so we don't know sheep very well, so in only having a few we'll get to know them a bit before we have more. The paddock they're in runs alongside our yard. It used to be used for poorly cows or cows about to have calves, so they didn't have to walk very far and we could keep an eye on them in case they needed some help. But since the cows were sold, this land hadn't been used for anything at all, so I was keen to get something to graze it, just to keep it tidy and put the grass to use. But the fences were looking pretty tired and were only suitable for cattle, so they needed replacing. I took the old one down, keeping the staples and barbed wire for reuse, and then we took the posts out, saved them for maintenance jobs, stuff like that, and replaced them with new ones, which cost £6 each. We just push them in with a Manitou, which is a bit lazy, but it's only a farm job, and if the posts are slightly wonky, it's rustic charm. This looks particularly wonky actually. Most of the fence looks a bit better than that now it's finished. Then we used this homemade clamp thing attached to the Manitou to string some sheep wire across the posts, before we tacked the wire to the posts, reusing the staples, and strung some barbed wire along the top. Nice and easy. The paddock needed a water supply, so my friend very kindly lent me his digger. So I started digging a trench down from where the trough was going to sit to an existing water pipe at the bottom of the hill. One of the coolest things about doing farm work is the connection to the wildlife you have while doing it. As I was digging the trench, this little wagtail was following me, inspecting the dirt. Robins behave like this as well, very friendly birds. And then I found an absolutely massive toad. It's always surprising how far underground these guys can be. The trench had a nice sweeping curve on it, more rustic charm, but it happened to be just the right length for a single roll of water pipe. So we stuck the water pipe in the trench, dragged the trough into place and attached it up. Troughs work like a toilet cistern, they have a little ball cock that operates a tap. Sure enough, it all worked well. The first water that came out was absolutely disgusting, but it came clean afterwards. And then we filled the trench back in and were ready for the sheep. I put a lump of slate at the mouth of the trough to keep their feet dry. I was a bit worried the trough might be too tall, but they seemed quite happy with it. But one of the things that drew me to sheep is that I could do it entirely myself on a farm of our size. It's not a very big farm. If I had cattle, I'd have to buy them in from dairy farmers. But with sheep, I could breed them myself and I could make hay for them to eat over winter. So I brought a hay bob for 300 quid, which sounds about reasonable, but I got ripped off because it was absolutely ragged. It's not a very consequential piece of equipment to learn this lesson on, but I realise in hindsight, when I first saw it, I should have looked at it as if I had brought it and was looking for things on it that needed replacing, because then I would have seen that most things on it needed replacing. I had to weld the stand back onto it. Many of the tines were broken or bent, and a lot of them were on backwards, so I had to replace over half of them, I think. I replaced all of the springs bar one, which was a fiddly job, but I did get the knack of it in the end. And it was also missing some nylon washers, so I had to get some more of them. The only thing that I haven't had to do up is the fundamental mechanism, and I don't even know that that works, I just haven't used it yet. I chose Leicester Longwools partly because they're a rare native breed, but also because I think they look nice. I've had lots of people who work with sheep say that it's very important you have animals that you like the look of and want to work with, which interestingly is something that people who play guitars also say. They say you need a guitar that you like the look of. But I also like the associations of the breed. I like that it's native, I like that it's historical. I like that this sheep was intended to be productive. They're big and they're woolly, they produce lots of the stuff that sheep produce. And because they're a rare breed, their wool is outside the regulations of the wool board, which means if I wanted to, I could sell it direct to consumer. The wool on black sheep is typically worth less than white wool because you can't dye it, but I think these fleeces are really beautiful. They have a really nice natural variation in texture, so if they were spun into a yarn it wouldn't need dyeing necessarily. We'll have to see what works. I'm not doing it to make money, but in an ideal world I'd like to get to a point where the sheep don't take up an enormous amount of my time, but do pay for themselves. I am very fortunate to have this land available and to have a lot of the machinery that I need, like tractors and a mower. But even with all those advantages, I am very much in the red. A pallet of fence posts was £600, 200 metres of sheep wire was £228, the hay bob was £300, but its attendant parts were another £218, half of which was labour because I needed people with a fancy workshop to straighten out a bent part. So almost 520 quid for a crap hay bob. I'm not doing that again. The roll of water pipe was £120. The sheep themselves were £150 each, which I understand was actually fairly reasonable, slightly more than you might expect for a commercial ewe lamb, but they're not commercial sheep, they're a rare breed, and he delivered them for that, so no complaining at all. I brought 2 bags of feed just to get them friendly and used to me, which was £20, which means in total I am currently £2,386 in the red. And this doesn't include anything like ground rent or machinery costs or fuel, or my time. You don't count your own time as a cost in farming, because if you did, you'd just lose money, which is no fun at all. The reason I'm doing this is because I want to keep alive the practice of animal husbandry, both within my family and more broadly. Growing up, I understood what it meant to have a family herd of cows, whereas most people don't have an emotional equivalent for that traditional relationship with animals. So as much as I will go on to intellectually defend the traditional relationship with animals, I think it's very important that the practice of animal husbandry is preserved and made accessible, so even people who aren't born into countryside families can experience it and understand how fulfilling it can be. This opens up a whole different set of problems about who can be a farmer and who can afford to be a farmer, which we will talk about very soon on this channel. But economic difficulties aside, I think this is a way of life that some people want to live, so they should be empowered to do that. So that is why I have donated this little plot of land to the maintenance of these sheep, which to my father's dismay are pedigrees, which means they have names. The first half of their names refers to the flock that they came from, owned by a very nice man called Chris. His flock is called Ascot. So these 6 sheep are called Ascot Quintana, Ascot Quillaga, Ascot Quincy, Ascot Queenie, Ascot Quito, and Ascot Quillota. But of course, this does not mean that they can't have nicknames, so if anyone has any suggestions, do let me know. But more importantly, if we are to breed these, my own flock will need a name. Lots of people will name their flock after their village or their own surname or their farm, something like that, but it could be anything. So I am very much open to suggestions. I haven't got any ideas myself at present. I'll be interested to hear what you come up with. The sheep themselves seem to be settling in quite well. As soon as they were dropped off, they got completely covered in sticky weed, but they seem very docile and friendly, so I've been able to keep them clean. So as I get to know them, I'll keep you updated as to whether they have individual personalities and characters in the way cows do, which I presume they must on some level. I've been feeding them a little bit every morning just to get them used to me and to have an opportunity to look at them and get off any sticky weed they've got stuck to their backs. So thank you for watching, and thank you to everybody who supported the channel so far. I very much appreciate your goodwill and thoughts, and normal scheduling shall return next week.